crop came on.
Did you know, like, sorry, they told me.
Chelsea,
Private,
very
yep,
quickly.
yep.
Absolutely.
Who's doing
I
this
can
one?
do A with, yep.
Okay.
Travis will do B.
Okay.
I don't think D needs it. Yes, this.
Well, I didn't give myself much time to figure it out. did I?
Just like,
But you-
there's no place to say. Yeah. And like, that's really helped him.
Oh, Edward. But D.
Developer, yeah.
Break it.
Okay, we're going to bring the August 14th City Council meeting to order, and we will begin with roll call, please, Jenny.
Walter.
Here.
Morak. Sarchet.
Here.
Vogel. Here. Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Item 3, approval of agenda. I'll ask for a motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
And roll call.
Morak.
Yes.
Sarchet.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
Item 4, public comments. The time and place for comments for any item other than those that are a public hearing. Have we had anyone request an opportunity to speak, Jenny?
No, sir.
We'll move on to item number 5 then, which is our consent items. I'll ask for a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion of that? If none, roll call.
Sarchet.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
Morak.
Yes.
Item 6, business items. A.
Sorry,
Oh,
could I ask one? I'll wait till the, sorry.
okay. Item 6, business items. A, Resolution 2023-98, authorizing the purchase of certain real estate. Chelsea, you're going to comment on that?
For the council to consider this evening is a real estate purchase agreement for 1600 West Broadway in the amount of $400,000. The property is for sale by a realtor. I know that there's been some inquiries about us purchasing this property in the past. It sits right next to the library. I don't know that the city has necessarily identified a purpose for the facility, but it'd probably be for future facility expansion.
So ask for a motion and a second, and then any additional discussion.
I'd just like to say that I think it's a good idea where it is, and I've heard nothing. So one of the things I'm proudest of since I've been on the council is that library being built up there and happening, and the comments I hear about how they like the location, where it is and everything, and the chance to expand the library up there, I think it's paramount.
So is that a motion?
Yes, sir, I'll make that in form of a motion. With all that, write it all down.
Got it.
I'll second what Ron said.
A second. Any additional discussion?
Yeah, I do want to bring up a couple things. So I agree with that, and I agree that I'm going to vote for this. I do have a couple of concerns. The process here, I know we had engaged the owner with some options, and I think the route to putting it on the market was a little bit disappointing, and as is the price, quite honestly. I mean, we were just talking about, and it's apples and oranges, but I'm going to compare it anyway, but we were just talking about the regional park. Bought 57 acres for twice the price here for, what is it, 2, 3? How many acres are we buying here?
It's just shy of 2.
Okay. So there's a little bit of a sticker shock. And and again, I do think it's the right move. It's a little bit of a hard swallow because of those factors. It does, in my opinion, also lock us into a path elsewhere with land. Because we've acquired a number of properties, and again, for good reason, but and I think I've said this 2 other times, but my appetite for future property purchases is gone. So I just want to, I don't want people to think that, though the trend has been at quite the clip, that there's full recognition that buying these, and especially buying with reserve funds that were quickly growing lower, although it would be even worse to borrow money to do so, but that trajectory should end pretty quickly. Just work with me.
I understand what you're saying and I appreciate it, but I've always been reluctant in the past when we bought land, when we didn't know we were gonna do it, just buying it, to be buying it, and we have a pretty good idea.
So let's have a roll call, please.
Dvorak,
Yes.
Sarchet,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
Moving on to 6B, amend engineering services agreement with Snyder and Associates for the High Trestle Trail to Neil Smith Trail, Phase 1 project in the amount of $44,375 to include services to design and bid a roundabout instead of the previously proposed intersection realignment and reconfiguration. Travis?
So for council's consideration tonight, as the motion would suggest, we're kind of changing, or we're proposing that council kind of change course on what we're doing at the North Side Drive and North Third Street intersection. Previously, we had just shown flattening out that curve, so basically pulling it west, making that a more smooth curve as you go along Third Street, adding some truck aprons to make the traffic off of North Side onto North Third a little smoother and less off-tracking, hopping the ditch, that kind of thing. As the East Vista Lake roundabout has come online, we've gotten increasingly more complaints about the North Side Drive intersection and looking at the function of that intersection under a general engineering work order. We completed a traffic study and traffic signal warrant analysis, as well as some roundabout concepts to make sure that we weren't trying to put something in that just flat out doesn't fit. And this intersection does meet several signal warrants. It also meets warrants for dedicated left turn lanes on Third Street, as well as right turn lanes off of North Side Drive. And it meets about half of the signal warrants right now and would meet almost every signal warrant in the next 10 years. So in considering all that, we think a roundabout makes more sense because it is actually going to help traffic flow without impeding traffic, whereas a signal would be a Band-Aid that has a limited amount of capacity, whereas a roundabout has a much higher capacity. And for that portion of town that's growing pretty rapidly, we think a single lane roundabout in this intersection is a better solution than shoving a traffic signal in a place that it maybe doesn't make the most sense.
So can I just ask a question? So, I mean, of course I can. Single lane.
No.
Single lane versus what's the other option? Multiple lane? I'm not quite understanding why you wouldn't have an opportunity to why it wouldn't be 2 lanes so that you would turn and go up, or you could go around. Is that all 1 lane?
Yes. So what you have at Vista Lake is what we call a single lane. It's a little wider lane, but it is a single lane roundabout, meaning that there's one. The best or the closest example would be at Irvindale. I can't remember Cross Street in Ankeny. That's a multi-lane route where it's got an inner lane that you can go. It's straight or left, or you can go right out of it or straight. And so, generally speaking, the multi-lanes are in new construction where you've got a lot of space and you have an unhampered amount of growth, whereas a single lane in this application is going to be the most functional simply because you have a single lane upstream of you already. And so it's going to work in network with that other roundabout that we've already constructed, and we think it's going to make a better overall transportation system through that corridor.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
What's the total amount of the engineering services agreement we have now?
Yeah, so the total, just have it open, actually. The total ends up being $228,475.
That's the new total, or that was the total before
That is the new.
change?
That's the new total. So we were at just north of 180,000 under the original contract.
So it increases by the amount on the agenda, the 44,000. And change.
And a majority of that increase is actually, so when we got the contract approved, we wanted to get out there and survey. And part of the increase is actually right-of-way services that we were gonna come, whether we did an intersection improvement or not, or a roundabout, because we were doing that warrant analysis in the background, and we didn't wanna present something to council that wasn't representative of the actual right-of-way services. So there's a little bit more land acquisition involved with the roundabout, from an easement standpoint, and then a little bit of design work as well.
So about half of that is roundabout acquisition.
Yeah, the right-of-way stuff, yeah.
Well, but we're talking about engineering services here, so actually, I'm gonna skip that because 24%-ish increase to the overall bid just because of the roundabout? That seems high to me.
So it's the roundabout as well as adding right-of-way services that weren't included in the original contract. Because this is above and, we haven't had right-of-way services since Davis Street in 2017, I think, on a Polk City project, because we haven't had full land acquisition as part of any project.
But what engineering work do you need to do on land acquisition?
So we're the real estate. We have a
So
real
you're-
estate.
You're negotiating with,
Correct. And because it's a DOT letting, there are more strict guidelines.
I get that, yeah, okay. And did, you probably. Can I keep this
Yeah,
question?
I asked him a question.
You're
Yeah,
in
you
charge of the
started
meeting,
it.
I'm not, so you got the gavel. Did we do traffic, so you said that it met the warrants right now and would project going forward. Do we have a comparison to when we started the process where it was at?
No, we didn't. But we had a count out here at Broadway and Third that it was an approximate 5 to 10% traffic increase that we did in 21, which would have been pre-roundabout, and then
Well, the school alone's gotta be more than that. School alone's gotta be, 5 to 10% increase on that.
well,
Intersection.
you have to remember too, though, the Third Street's baseline traffic level is very high.
Yeah.
So it was about 1,000 cars a day.
But my perspective would be that we think that a roundabout, because of the increased traffic essentially going north.
And that's been the increased complaints have been at the school time hours, and it's primarily what the movement that we're trying to solve about is the left from north side onto Third Street, which I have heard can take up to 15 minutes during peak school hours. Because you get all of this through traffic that's not stopping,
Yep.
and the roundabout's pushing it at Vista Lake is pushing it all through very smoothly, and so there's never a gap that people judge to be big enough to make that left turn in town.
That's very true. I've witnessed that. But I think we're kind of getting the cart ahead of the horse here. Because shouldn't we decide we want a roundabout instead of turn lanes and stuff before we spend this money on engineering? Once you spend the money on engineering, kind of locked into it. There are other options. I think we need to decide which is the best option. And I know roundabouts are popular and seem to be pushed, and the one we have does well with traffic, but I see some problems out there that could be corrected. Just not with the paving around about itself, the surrounding area and what it's done. Bruce?
Well, that was gonna be my question has the roundabout up by the school, what's the success of that, both in terms of traffic flow and, we had accidents up there, those two kind of components. How has that gone now that it's been in place for a while?
So from a traffic flow perspective, I've stood out there during school let out, and it operates exactly how you would want a roundabout, where you get that large influx of traffic in a very short period of time. And then, like the benefit of a roundabout more so than turn lanes, traffic signals and that kind of thing is really excels at getting huge volumes of cars through an intersection in a short period of time without then hampering people at, say, 11 o'clock in that same intersection. Because a traffic signal, oftentimes you'll sit there for 30 seconds to a minute and there'll be no cross traffic because that cycle was set up to handle the school time traffic or the rush hour type traffic.
And that would be the number one complaint we get about the Parker Boulevard Bridge Road traffic light is nobody complains about it during rush hour, but everybody complains about it every other hour of the day that they have to sit there and wait when there's nobody coming.
Jeremy, from your perspectives, have people figured out how to use it, number
Yeah.
one, and is it as safe as we, I
I'm
mean, so
aware
far?
of one accident there, and that was in construction, so we took that right. But other than that, everything's just, and that was I believe, a distracted drive issue. That time.
And what's it look like on this intersection?
For,
The traffic or accident?
the only, can't really recall too many accidents at the intersection, but the curve as you go north, we've had a lot of major, pretty significant accidents where they go off that curve into the driveway.
Because there's a
from
big,
there.
yeah, there's a big drop off
Yeah.
and very little median or shoulder.
Correct, yep.
Where now? What curve are we talking
If
about?
you're headed up towards the roundabout,
Yeah,
once you go past North Side Drive, it kind of curves off to the left.
You're familiar with it.
It's in front of the lockers.
Takes a pretty hard left bank.
It's in front of the lockers.
Yes.
okay,
yep.
yeah, I remember one.
Their driveways usually would.
And the ones I've seen out there, and either saw one when it happened or saw one afterward, speed was definitely, it wasn't just
Yeah.
the road, it wasn't just,
And that is something else that we considered too when looking at a roundabout is when we laid in the concept, we did the posted speed limit and then we designed the approaches to be at 25 because we knew that that was an issue as well. That's something that even standing at construction meetings I was observing. There's some excessive speed times.
and it's, the roundabout definitely slowed people down, but it's also changed as people get used to it. They're coming out of that roundabout.
What is the speed limit in between there and this intersection? 25,
Between the roundabout and, it's 35.
35?
Yeah. Once you get down there, I think around the Ironwood, it goes from 25 to 30.
Turns to 25 at about Columbus Park.
Yeah.
But I do think if there's another roundabout, that's another, you know, you gotta slow down as you're approaching it versus nothing slowing you down now. A light sometimes trying to beat the yellow, you know, or a number of things.
Well, I don't think there's any question that a roundabout makes you pay more attention,
Oh, absolutely.
to what's going on around you.
Confusion will slow you down.
Well, just being aware of your surroundings, I think, is what I'm saying. You just know you're paying more attention.
I guess I'm speaking for myself. But I've gotten used to it.
So, and
But-
is this,
There's also a big increase in price. Gotta pay for it.
So that is one thing worth noting. In the original concept with the curve realignment, you guys were at $2,038,000 with the trail and the associated improvements. Our new estimated cost is $2.216 million, an increase of approximately $178,000. But since that time, you have also gotten $271,651 in MPO funds. And then the other thing worth noting is in the previous concepts, we were strictly taking the roadway and we were realigning. Adding traffic signals alone would be $300,000. The addition of turn lanes would also increase that price. So in this particular situation with the issues and the volume of vehicles through that intersection, roundabout is actually the cheaper of the full build options.
So let me make sure I understood that correctly. You're saying out of a $2 million budget, adding the roundabout adds 168K roughly,
78.
178. But what we're approving tonight goes from $228,000 or from 180 something to 228 for the engineering services.
Correct.
So the engineering services are a third of the construction cost for a roundabout? I know I'm comparing two things that are completely different.
So
Again,
it's a little, the dip, it's not a quarter of the, how do I put it? So the increase is not, it's almost entirely in staging and layout design of a roundabout versus an intersection reconstruction, as well as the increase of the engineering services, if you want to think of it that way, is actually more in the ballpark of about half of the $44,000. The $22,000 is the right-of-way acquisition services, which were going to be, I think he told me $18,000 for a standard intersection. So the increase in engineering for a roundabout is approximately $22,500.
When you talk about right-of-way acquisition, you're talking about getting property from
So,
homeowners.
we need one formal acquisition, and then we need several easements, some construction easements, some are storm sewer easements, because as we put that trail along the east side of the roadway on 3rd Street, we actually cut off flow to that ditch, so we'll have to pipe underneath of that trail, and those intakes will be in those folks' front yards.
Storm sewers out there would solve a lot of problems without the big deep ditches.
And that would be the intent, because the roundabout will have a curb and gutter section. It will be an urban section, very similar to what's out on Vista Lake. And the intent would be is we don't come back to this intersection for quite a while. And so we would solve a lot of those problems at the same time.
So those ditches will go.
I don't know that they'll go away entirely, but I think they would function a lot better. We haven't gotten that deep yet. We would try and solve as many problems as we can.
But to put a bookend on it, the project itself is less money. The roundabout is less money than the project that we plan to do before tonight. The roundabout is less money than signaling and realignment altogether.
So before tonight, you had realigning 3rd Street, putting truck aprons on. That didn't include turn lanes, it didn't include traffic signals. Since we've done the warrant analysis, the roundabout is the cheaper option.
not compared to the original
So
plan.
originally, we were just gonna leave it as a T intersection,
Correct, for the stop condition on
but
this.
now that you've done additional research, justifies more control and flow than what is currently offered.
And based on that, the roundabout is the most efficient, effective, and fiscal, I guess, option out there.
Yes.
Okay, let's have a motion to approve 6B. And a second, please.
So
Second.
And any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Vogel,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Walters,
Abstain.
DeVore, Sarchet.
Moving on to 6C, second reading of ordinance 2023-9300, amending chapter 57, dangerous and vicious animals. We'll have a motion and a second, and then any further discussion. Anything else on this? We'll ask for the roll then, please.
Sarchet,
yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
DeVore.
Yes.
Um,
Before we move on, Jeremy, thank you for your report and for your information in the packet. That was very helpful. Sorry.
So then we'll move on to 7, And we will begin with staff. Anything from staff? How about you, Chelsea? Anything additional?
Nope, thank you.
Council members?
One quick thing, and I apologize, because I meant to give you a heads up, Chelsea, but, I've gotten, I don't know if other people have, gotten a couple more emails and people reaching out on UTV. So I know I brought that up a month or so ago. I just want to be, and I would assume that staff is working on it, but I want to be reactive to, the inquiries that I'm getting, again, specifically since Ankeny passed what they did, but, as someone who's in favor of a golf cart before, I would like to revisit at least the UTV piece, if not the whole thing, sooner rather than later. And again, I'm just bringing that up, one, because people have reached out, and two, over the last couple of months, that's probably as much as I've heard any topic got brought up. So I don't want people to think that it's not being researched.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a steward of the folks here and you know, I'm up for re-examining.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'll change my mind, but
right.
it doesn't matter. I think that the fact that there's been more than one, there's been several inquiries. Absolutely, we need to at least take a look at pros and cons again and make our decision on that.
And that's what I'm asking for as well, not
Yeah, I'd
people
say
vote how they want to vote. I'm just saying to revisit the issue, not.
I'm open to revisiting. I wouldn't mind tagging on, and I said I'm admittedly becoming a really crabby old lady about electric scooters and things like that, because I see kids flying around, and so I don't know, Jeremy, if I've seen Facebook comments, I've seen kids fly, it's like I think they're becoming more and more common. I mean, so many kids have them now, so I don't know if, along with, these other types of motorized transportation devices, if it's worth discussing that as well to see if there's anything else we should be doing to help promote safety with those kind of
That's a good point.
vehicle. I mean, they're, again, it's different because they're a kid's toy, but
Yeah.
Technology, out kids.
No, I agree.
Are they legal on the road, electric scooters? I'm guessing no.
Can't.
For the electric scooters, yeah, there's no legislation out there that I'm aware of. Do you know of anything that regulates them? I don't know of any cities that, I think they're kind of categorized as a toy, essentially.
Yeah, I don't think but that doesn't mean that they can be on the streets.
so yeah, like I said, there goes one right now. I mean, just case in point, right there.
No,
Just
that
in the middle of the
said, I don't
street.
think we have any way to force that.
Right,
Because there's no legislation and there's no city ordinance that prohibits. I think that's where.
And I would leave it up to you guys as discretion recommendations, but again, it seemed like a worthy thing of if there is anything, whether it's rules or just really promotion of the safety aspect.
But
Yeah.
I've heard people say that they're comparable to bicycles, subjects more or less the same
Electric
rules.
bicycles.
But I'd like to add, that's the reason why I was late. There's guys behind about 8 kids on scooters, I just couldn't get here.
A
So-
posse of
I'm not making this up.
So what is the council asking for? You're asking for some information on scooters, on UTVs, and on golf carts? All?
We're working to put some information together, so we'll
And I
have
had
it
pointed
to you.
out to me today that there's a difference between UTVs and ATV scooters.
No, you're fine.
Under the law.
Yeah, we need a definition of what that means, because I really don't. I kind of can figure it out, maybe, but
The A stands for all-terrain and U stands for utility.
right.
And in Ankeny, they only dealt with utility.
Yeah, that's true.
And they both are capable of going very, very fast.
Anything else from the council? So I just have one thing here. I'd just like to read it. It's very short. We had a big event here with RAGBRAI coming through town, and there were over 100 people who volunteered to help out with it. And it was, as far as I'm concerned, a resounding success. And so I just wanted to read you this email that I got. I got a few emails, but I thought this one really stood out nicely. Just wanted to give your city a shout out as my buddies and I favorite city. We rolled through so many cities over the week, but continually talked about how much we enjoyed our short visit. Plus, I got to hold a hedgehog. I don't know where he held that hedgehog. It was our first RAGBRAI and our first time in Iowa. We'll be talking about it for months. Thanks again for your hospitality, Steve Morrow from Denver, Colorado. So we did get some recognition from both inside and outside the state, which was very nice to hear because everybody worked very hard.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've had a couple of really good events this summer, and we'll go forward from there, that's for sure.
I talked to RAGBRAI riders from Des Moines and other places, and they said how enjoyable the stop was. Heard nothing but good things.
I rode that day,
Yeah.
and I heard it at least 4 times on the way into Des Moines. Like, you know, groups kind of decompressing from the day, saying that Polk City was the highlight up until that point. Obviously, I didn't ride anything after that, so I don't. But that was very consistent with what you got as well.
Shade helps. Lots of it. Okay, so that all said, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?